time, which means that they're actually part of the same experience. So that aggregate experience leaves traces, and that's an explanation how uh, for how constellations form around a particular person. Theoretically, the traces are agentic, so this has to do with them involving motor aspects as well as sensory aspects. That is, the traces include the ability to do things, to plan, to act, so that when traces are addressed, that is, when they become relevant to circumstances, they can speak and act, and this. For that reason, we use this metaphor of voice, and the fact that we have multiple experiences and multiple categories of experience is this theory's way of understanding internal multiplicity, multiple voices within people. And once we started thinking about this, we sort of looked through the literature, and it turns out that just about all psychological or psychotherapy theories anyway include some sort of multiplicity. So it gets called all sorts of different things: configurations of self, subpersonalities, self-plurality, automatic thoughts, internal objects, top dog, underdog. There's various names. I mean, of course, voice is a metaphor, and it has all the sorts of limitations that metaphorical things do, but I think it's evocative and characterizes things. So here is one of my blue question marks. I wonder if maybe I'll just pause a minute and see if there are any questions.
Yes, Bill, we have a question from Soti Grafanaki.
Hi, Soti.
And I'm going to unmute this person right now. Oh, I see this is, let me see. This person may not have a microphone, so maybe, Soti, can you type your question for us? Let me see. I'm not getting anything yet, but I can go. Oh, let's see. You can talk now. Soti, you can talk. You can ask your question.
Can you listen to me?
Yes. Hi, Soti. How are you?
I was trying to figure out how it works anyway. I will come back later with my question. Thank you.
Okay.
So we'll have a question. Can I ask you a question then, Bill? Could you give us an example
Sure.
of a voice? So it's just so that we have an idea of what it is or what it can be.
I mean, any experience is a voice. I mean, theoretically, so that for example, if I'm telling you what I had for breakfast this morning, we could say in a way that it's a voice of my experience, my breakfast eating experience, that's talking. But I think that more practically, an easier way of thinking about it is constellations of traces. Like, for example, the voice of your mother will speak in you. Or speak through you, or so sometimes you can hear the voice of your mother, it speaks, or with a traumatic experience, we could say has a voice that will, so that when it becomes active and does something, or more usually it's I mean, the sorts of things I think that we encounter in therapy are voices of problematic ways of being. They're sort of constellations of ways of being, for being dependent, for example, and in a problematic way that might emerge and when it's triggered under certain circumstances, and we'll speak. Does that help?
Yes, that's helpful. We also have another question right now. from
Okay.
Ignacio Echeverne. I hope I pronounced this right.
Yes.
But Ignacio, you can talk now.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Right. First of all, Bill, thank you very much for giving us this opportunity. Before you mentioned that you've seen that the change process is pretty similar in different clinical settings, if I understood correctly. Do you relate this change process with Prochaska's stages of change, or do you have a different theoretical model for change?
Well, I think it probably, I mean, I think we're trying to get at some of the same things. I think Prochaska's work has mostly been with what I would sort of see as the upper end of the assimilation developmental continuum. But I mean, it's the same sort of, in a way, it's kind of the same sort of idea. Is that so? Does that answer the question?
Yes, yes, it does. Thank you very much.
Okay.
There are no more questions. So
Okay.
you want me to continue?
Well, I will.
We will continue right now, I think.
Yeah, I'll just carry on here.
Okay.
Okay, here's the next slide. So these voices, so now I'm talking not so much about, well, problematic voices, but under sort of normal circumstances, or under any circumstances, the voices, which is a sort of way of saying our different experiences normally become linked to each other, so that we can move between them, and they get linked by meaning bridges, and that's a process of assimilation. I put these in red in here just because those are the things I'm going to be talking about for the rest of this little module. And it links them so that the model thinks of personality as a community of voices. The idea is that although they're different, we're sort of internally multiple. Under normal, favorable circumstances, the different pieces form a sort of a community or a team that so that it can kind of pass things off to each other, and the most appropriate experience or most appropriate information can emerge when needed, so that they become resources. The idea is that we have sort of our cooking voices that emerge in the kitchen because that's what's called for. Our teaching voices emerge in the classroom because that's what's called for, and so forth. Okay, so the question then is, well, how does this linking take place? What makes them? How do these things get linked up? And remember, I'm talking basics here. Okay, so they get linked by semiotic meaning bridges, by signs, is the theory that we are developing. Maybe I could just make a quick aside here to say that that most of this work has been done using case studies. So although I'm summarizing this in a kind of abstract theoretical way, it's grown as a way of understanding case material that we've worked on, and I can later on talk about the sort of logic and process of that if you want. But this is where we've got to, where I've got to anyway. Okay, so signs. So we have to know what signs are, and the idea is that signs are things like words or gestures or diagrams, things you could say they are, on the one hand, they're observable. That is, the signs are things that are in the world. You can see them or hear them, like the words I'm saying now are signs. But they also carry other people's unobservable experience. So this is a kind of way of bridging this dualism in a way. That is, people share their experience by using words and so forth. So to the extent that you understand what I'm saying right now, you're actually having a little bit of my experience. Not perfectly, but you're having something of my experience to the extent that you understand me. And signs, so they carry experience from person to person, and they also carry experience across time. So you can maintain your experience by making notes to yourself. You can read what the Greek philosophers wrote. You can have a familiar soft toy that reminds you of that carries your experience of being comforted by your mother with you. These are external observable things that are carrying experience, and as you observe these signs, you can re-experience bits of that before. Okay, this is another basic issue. What does meaning mean? What I call meaning is the experience of a sign. So that's the sign's meaning, so that they say what is it, so that it's when you hear a word, the experience you have, well, the inner process that is that goes with that is the sign's meaning. Now, of course, the meaning is not necessarily the same to the speaker and the hearer, or to the speaker or to the hearer at different times. But to the extent that the sign means the same thing to two people on a particular occasion, it's a meaning bridge between them. That means that through the sign they're having the same experience. That's signs that, to the extent that signs do that, we call them meaning bridges. Now, it turns out that signs change meaning on each use. I mean, the meaning of sign has been changing just over the course of this slide. That is, you understand it differently, and I'm expressing different things using that same word just over the course of this slide. And so a sign never means exactly the same thing twice, by definition. If you, because that is in the sense that your experience is never the same twice. So it keeps changing. But the signs also accumulate the preceding meanings. And this is the kind of spooky part of signs for me. And the word I use for it is historicity. The historicity of signs is the way they accumulate the experience of people who have previously used those signs. So that I learned about signs a lot from my friend Mikael Lehmann from Finland, maybe, and he learned about signs from reading Mikhail Bakhtin and his members of his circle who wrote about these things. As a Russian linguist and critic, literary critic. So that as you're listening to me and understanding what I mean by sign, you're also sharing some of Mikael Lehmann's experience passed through me and through the signs that I'm using, and also some of Mikhail Bakhtin's experience, things that he's written about. So there's a sense in which every word we speak recapitulates our cultural history. It's quite a powerful idea. Signs can make things similar. So, for example, if you call two things by the same name, you say that's a dog and that's a dog, then it makes them similar, even though they don't look very similar. Or if experience or different characters or events are in the same narrative, that's a kind of way of drawing out a similarity of them. It's sort of a way of linking. It's giving smooth access between them. Or explanations are another kind of way that signs make things similar and related and linked. So traces of similar things, that is, experiences of similar things, or experiences of many things, become linked to each other as if they represented parts of the same experience. That is, that things can become connected. So that, and since signs can make any two things similar, they offer vast possibilities for building networks of meaning. So that's, I came to another blue question mark. Maybe I should pause a minute and see if there are other questions.
I don't have any questions right now from people. I don't see any raised hands or any questions in the question window, but maybe they will come up now.
Okay.
Let me just see.
Okay.
Yes, I have a raised hand. Let me check. Yes, I have a question from Carla Cunha.
Oh yeah, hi Carla.
Yes, I'm Carla Cunha from Portugal. Hello, how are you?
Oh, hello. I'm very well, thanks.
Oh, okay.
Yes, I can hear you.
I'm struggling with this question about. You said that a sign means a meaning bridge is achieved when through signs, and signs
Yes.
when they mean the same thing for two people, that's when it appears a meaning bridge.
Yes,
one way that I'm understanding this is through the notion of a synthesis. But my
Yes.
question is it possible for a sign, and my question is about the sharedness of the meaning, and I'm wondering when some things of some particular features are shared, but other features of experience might not be shared between two people. If that's one
Yes.
one possibility, or if you are looking at meaning bridges when there is a synthesis between the meaning of these signs shared between two people. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, let me try. The question is, well, the point is that people never share experience exactly. There's some elements that are similar and some are dissimilar, and so I mean I think that's absolutely right, and so the concept of meaning bridge has got to be a matter of degree, so that the meaning bridges can be the meaning bridge is a semiotic way of giving smooth access, but it's never perfect. And maybe I should underline here that another thing I think I didn't quite say, but is that meaning bridges, the assimilation model. Perhaps this is presumptuous of the model, but the assimilation model is trying to use the same concepts for both interpersonal and intrapersonal communication. So what we want to say is that the meaning bridge is just as an explanation, or what I'm saying is sharing my experience with you, not perfectly. We don't have it, but with some elements or some aspects or to some degree, we're communicating, and to that extent my words are meaning bridges. In the same way, an explanation can or semiotic kinds of meaning bridges can link different voices within a person, so that I'm saying that the word dog can communicate something between you and me about dogs, but it also is a way of communicating within myself about giving a name to something, to a category of things. It makes it similar. And I mean, dogs is maybe something that's not so obvious, but I could give an example like Beatles paraphernalia or something like that, which the things that don't actually look alike at all, but by imposing a semiotic meaning bridge on it, by giving them a name, I could make them similar, or by including many life events in a coherent life story. It gives access to those different life events, and the life events that were not part of that story are kind of excluded. So there's a difference between events that are in my life story and events that are not in my life story that are linked either within me or interpersonally. It's the same concept. Is that
Okay.
okay? All right.
So we have another
Not much time.
question.
We'll keep going.
We have another
Okay.
question
Not me.
from Soti again. So I'm opening your microphone,
Okay.
Soti.
Hi, this time I
Okay.
will speak. The previous time I
All right,
got
good.
intimidated by the machine.
Right.
One thing I want to clarify, I want to clarify Is he actually trying to carry the experience across and create building networks of meaning or meaning bridges? Because the client is sharing some of those signs. So we are listening. We have not been part of that experience, but we are trying through our responses to do exactly that thing you are talking about, to build like these meaning bridges.
Exactly. Yes, that's right. And I mean, I mean, in that case, I hope I'm not jumping ahead of the story too much to say that in some sense, what the therapist is doing in trying to do empathic reflections is to speak with the client's voice, and so that in a very concrete way, the meaning bridge between the client and the therapist is also usable as an internal meaning bridge for the client. That is that in fact many therapeutic interventions are trying to do this. That is to trying to give a semiotic link, an explanation or a narrative or a term or a concept that is acceptable to multiple internal voices, or to the therapist and client. So that essentially they're using they're trying to find words that bridge the different experiences. Typically, in that case, a sort of problematic experience, one that's actually not so connected.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Okay. Okay. Does that help? Okay. So okay. I got a message from Louis here to move ahead. So we'll do that. As I say, we'll never get through all these modules, but all of these things have been written about by me or other people, and so if you email me about what your interests are, I can send you things to read. Normally, so this is non-problematic assimilation. The experiences are full of signs. Our whole we live in an ocean of signs. And so we're living in an ocean of meaning, an ocean of other people's experiences. And the traces of experience that we have and that are passed from others to us get aggregated into constellations of related experience. So that experiences, for example, the significant person I was talking before about, the voice of your mother get linked because there are similarities in different experiences of your mother, and these constellations, when they are called upon, they act. They speak when they're addressed. So the fundamental kind of action is responsive. It's it's speaking when addressed. Okay. Problematic experiences are those that are painful, threatening, discrepant, traumatic, somehow not me. An original problematic experience, something that happens to you in the world, is typically marked by a lot of emotional pain or fear or disgust or something unpleasant. And the reactivation is also intensely dysphoric, unpleasant, and there's one of the modules I've got here is about emotion, and I mean I think that's key to this. But problematic experiences are also agentic, just like the voice of your mother or the voice of psychoanalytic theory or whatever voices you have in you. They speak when they're addressed, and so they're problematic voices. This is a metaphor again, so that when problematic voices are addressed, they can lead to actions that are contradictory, seem different from what the normal community of voices are, and can be maladaptive and can get you into trouble, as well as causing pain. And some manifestations of this are, in the extreme, sort of flashbacks and state switches. That is that the experiences that you've had before, wartime experiences, when they're triggered, it's like suddenly you're back on the battlefield, and it's very alive and very disturbing. Or less extremely, topics that are avoided, or pain, and also manifestations that can be disguised, that voices can speak or act without being recognized. And there's a huge variety of manifestations that I think are familiar to therapists generally. I have a question mark here quickly. Is there anything going, or I'll charge ahead?
I think you can go ahead.
Okay, I'm feeling a little bit of pressure from Louis here, but we'll get to it. It doesn't really matter. There's lots to talk about in all these cases. So building bridges to problematic experiences, which is what therapy is about, involves at the extreme first becoming aware that there's something there, and in extreme cases, people have experiences that are just completely warded off, and then coming to a name, that is, giving it a name, addressing it, finding a common grounds, coming to terms in a way with the experience, developing some sort of mutual understanding between the, if you want, the sort of dominant or community of voices and the problematic voice, or a way of saying that is to gain insight into it, to have some meaning bridge that encompasses both, and then using and elaborating that understanding, that is to use the understanding that you have of the problem to apply it and refine it in life, and eventually gaining smooth access so that the problem becomes a resource. So naming, insight, narratives, elaborations, all of these things are semiotic meaning bridges. I think I've said that. And through assimilation, this process of assimilation, problematic experiences join the community. That is, they become resources. The things that were avoided can actually be used, and it gives access to a piece of experience. And we've developed over the years a description. It's sometimes a scale, and sometimes we call it a sequence. Theoretically, it's a sequence of the assimilation of problematic experiences. So this list describes the relationship of a problematic voice or problematic experience to the rest of the person, if you want, or to at least to another voice. So this is really about the relationship of two internal voices, maybe external too, but we've mostly studied internal voices. That is, from warded off, dissociated at the extreme, then unwanted thoughts, active avoidance, sort of becoming vaguely aware, sort of emergence. Usually, in the case of problematic experiences, that stage 2 is the truly painful one, the cathartic sort of stage, and then stating a problem, clarifying it, gaining some sort of understanding or insight about it, working through that, applying it in life, taking the rough edges off, and then solving the problem, turning it into a resource, and eventually integrating it into the rest of the personality, so that it's smooth and a sort of unremarkable part, a resource for the personality. So we've done quite a bit of work looking at these and working on descriptions of these stages in a lot of case studies. So it says here, it's an empirical sequence. It's something that we continue to refine. It's not what I mean to be saying is that it's not a theoretical assertion in itself. It's not an assumption that we go through these stages. This is a description of an attempt to describe the sort of common formal features of what we see when we study, when we sort of try to track problems or topics across sequences of sessions. They seem to follow this kind of sequence. Clients, of course, don't necessarily bring things at the warded off stage. They may bring problems at any stage. Actually, it's typically at stages 2 or 3 here. If you see the sort of when the problems are emerging and painful, or when they're at the sort of problem stage, that's more typical. But then, and any movement along that sequence could, in a theoretical way, could be considered as progress. And describing it is what our research is. One of the things our research has been about. And I think one kind of application of this is that each stage points towards different clinical tasks. Recognizing the stages, I think, can be clinically useful. That is, for example, if you recognize a problematic experience that's being avoided, it's being an unwanted thoughts sort of stage, then what that points towards is a clinical task of uncovering, that is, of getting it to emerge, of confronting in a way. And it's the sort of the stage where for a brief time things may get worse before they get better. It's pointing towards emotional pain. Or if people can come and name their problem, can give a problem statement, can say what the problem is, then what's required is working towards a sort of a more explicit semiotic meaning bridge, gaining some sort of understanding and working on that, sort of working from problem statement towards understanding is actually a very rewarding stage of therapy, because people are gaining things and feeling better as they find an understanding of it, or are given an understanding. Different therapies use different ways of doing that. Okay, that's the end of that module finally, and so I think both if there are questions I can answer those, and also I think Kim can say can put up a poll. While it's going, maybe I can just say again what what these are, so that what the encounters between voices, the emotion part is kind of more theory. It's sort of it's more basics about what the theoretical ideas that we've developed about what moves or what underlies the kind of pain people feel, and in a way it's I mean, dysphoric emotion is kind of the engine behind psychological problems, theoretically, and so the process of how that actually works and is theoretically important. The methods module is a kind of a quick survey of how of approaches we've used. The theory building case studies part is more is a justification for the use of case studies in scientific research on psychotherapy. And the logical operations is I guess I'd recommend that come after the theory building case studies module. Just it's a more in-depth look at the underlying logic of how that works. I'll say again, all these things have got things written about them, which I can send you. How are we doing?
Okay, so Bill, right now 70% of people have voted. I think people wanted to hear you tell about everything before they voted. So we're just going to wait a few seconds, and right now the theory building case studies are on top of the list, followed by methods for studying the assimilation model. So those are the top two right now, and 79% of people have voted. So I'm just going to wait a little bit longer to see if more people are going to vote. And otherwise, I'm going to close the poll. Let me just see if there are any questions in the meantime. I think not. No, we don't have any questions at this time. Okay, so 83% of people have voted now, so I don't think any more are going to vote. So I'm going to close the poll right now. And this will show the results. Do you see the results right now, or do you not see them?
I don't. You're going to have to. I can't see them. I don't. So I guess you'll have to tell me. So the theory building case studies people wanted to hear about.
Yeah, that's 50% of people voted for that. The methods for studying the assimilation model was voted by 42%, and it's close. And the assimilation model concept and process is 29%, and logical operations in case study research 21%.
Okay. Okay, maybe the emotion one didn't get in there, but theory building case studies is fine. We can do that. If I don't get to one of the ones you liked, write me and I'll send you something to read. Okay, let's see. There's me again. Case studies. All right. So. Let's see. As Louis says, I'll try to go through this quickly without being too quick. So, what I want to argue is that case studies can yield scientific evidence. I mean, we've used them for building these things, and to do this, I have to say what I mean by science. I mean, I think that science is something that is seeking a unified, coherent account. That is, we're trying to understand things in a coherent way, and it's not the only kind of research, and particularly it's not the only kind of case study research. That there are enriching kinds of case studies where the idea is not to produce a unified general account, but rather just to appreciate what happened in the case. That is, to gain a kind of human understanding and a familiarity and a kind of a narrative of that particular case without specifying the general. And I think that's a perfectly legitimate thing to do. I mean, maybe the most common thing that case studies are used for, but that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about using the cases to understand the world more generally. Okay. So theories are ideas stated in words or diagrams or numbers or other kinds of signs. So the theories are sort of things that are out there in the world. They're stated. You can see them. And I think that it's fair to say that changes in theories can lead to changes in practice. The way people think about it, the way therapists think about their work affects the work that they do. It affects how they decide what to do next. Scientific research, I think, provides quality control, and this is the key point. It provides quality control on ideas by comparing the theories with observations. So the quality control is basically the observations. Case studies can be contrasted with hypothesis testing. It's an alternative, strategy, but I think it provides equivalent kind of quality control. It's a different kind, but it's also useful. And I think that case studies have the advantage that they can incorporate unique features and context, and they facilitate improvements in theories. And so this list is kind of an outline of this presentation. Comparison of the strategies, the unique features, and this improvements in theories, which goes by the name abduction, which I will explain later. So both hypothesis testing and case studies are empirical, and I would argue scientific in the sense that I'm using that word, so I know very charged word, and both can provide quality control on theory. The traditional statistical hypothesis testing strategy is to derive, this is hypothetical-deductive method, derive one statement from a theory, compare that statement with many observations. If the observations match the statement, then confidence in that statement is substantially increased. We say it's not due to chance. We assign some probability level to it, to rejecting the null hypothesis, makes it a little bit more likely. And this substantial increase in our confidence in that one derived statement gives us a small increment of confidence in the theory as a whole. Theory, could have happened for other reasons, but it makes the theory a bit more plausible. The case study strategy, in comparison, compares many theoretically based statements with observations all at once. And it does this by describing case observations in theoretical terms, is describing many details of the case in theoretical terms, and the question is, how well does the theory describe the details? In this kind of strategy, the change in confidence in any one statement may be small because you've only observed one instance of that particular aspect of the theory, but because many statements are examined in a rich case study, the gain in confidence in the theory as a whole may be justifiably as large as from a statistical hypothesis testing study. Of course, no one study proves the theory, but the point is that you can get a similar small increment either way. And the key then is multiple points of contact between observation and theory, and that's true whether the multiple points of contact are multiple observations on the same statement or small numbers of observations on multiple statements. And Donald Campbell, who was a famous methodologist of a couple generations ago, described this as as analogous to degrees of freedom, that you get a lot of degrees of freedom by making many observations of theoretically relevant aspects of one case. Okay, so yeah, I can take questions. Are there questions about that comparison? This is about
unmuted
versus hypothesis testing.
Hi, Bill. This is Sam. Kim's stepped out for a moment. If there are any questions, go ahead and raise your hand.
Okay.
It looks like right now there are no questions, so why don't you continue on?
Nope. Okay, we'll carry on. Okay, so this is point 2 in the case for case studies, and this has to do with that it allows unique or distinctive features of cases to inform the theory. So, and I attribute some of this thinking to George Rosenwald, who was a social psychologist, University of Michigan, also several years ago. So that theories obviously are meant to encompass lots of cases, and each case includes unique, distinctive features, and these distinctive features of the cases are not error. It's not like if there's something different about this case or some aspect that's important in this case, that's an error, and case studies can use them to inform theory. And I think this is analogous to the parable of the blind man and the elephant. If you remember this, there were 6 blind men who had heard about elephants but had never been in the presence of an elephant, and of course they couldn't see the elephant, so they went and they would to feel the elephant, to touch the elephant, to see what an elephant was like. And the man who felt the side said the elephants are like walls, and the man who felt the tusk said elephants are like spears. The man who felt the trunk said the elephant is like a snake. He felt the leg, he said an elephant is like a tree. The one who felt the ear said elephants are like fans, and the one who felt the tail said that the elephant is like a rope. Well, they were not wrong. In the parable, they disagreed with each other and never came to an understanding. But obviously the implication of the parable is that the elephant, like psychotherapy, has many aspects, and each aspect is relevant. And a good theory has to account for the distinctive features as well as the unique features of this. So, and case studies have this ability to examine the distinctive features. And I think an implication of this is that a focus on common themes, which is I think something that that sometimes qualitative researchers fall into, is looking for common themes, is they may miss the interesting parts and may actually leave nothing at all. If you look at the common features of what the blind men observed in the elephant, there wasn't much left. But each part of the that they observed was actually quite relevant and would be extremely relevant to a comprehensive theory of elephants. Another little blue question mark. Sam, did any questions appear?
There are no questions right now, Bill.
You're back. Good.
Yes.
Okay. Carrying on. Hope it doesn't mean I'm losing everybody. but we'll see.
There's
Okay,
still
so
a lot of
this,
people actively watching, so I don't think you're losing people. You're just
okay,
here.
good. All right. Okay, good. All right, good. Um, okay, another metaphor that I like, is the idea of observations permeating the theory. So this is a diffusion metaphor. The idea is that the images of particles of observation sort of spreading through the interstices of the theory. They permeate. It's chemical image. The idea is that ideas change to fit the observations, that aspects of the observations then can become part of the theory. You have a new case or make some new observations, and the theory is explained differently in different words with new illustrations. The observations, these observations can accumulate in the theory. That is, that each new case or each new study, doesn't have to be case study, any kind of study, changes the theory a little bit, and so the next time that theory is explained, it's kind of packed in there, so that this sort of, it's an alternative, I think, to the brick wall metaphor for how science can be cumulative. That it sort of fits in, and this process of it has been called abduction by Peirce, who was a 19th century American philosopher, a little bit obscure, but he used this word, and he wanted to say that abduction is modifying or elaborating or expanding the theory in light of the new observations. It's a logical observation, like deduction and induction, and it's a way that a theory can come to expand and encompass new phenomena. But it's also constrained by previous theory and observation. That is, that abduction, you're not allowed to just make up any old thing to explain the new observation, because it has to be consistent with all of the previous observations too. So each additional observation may require an adjustment to the theory, but it's not allowed to do anything. So it's so that it allows things for it to accumulate. So this is the permeation notion. I think theories of psychotherapy offer rich accounts of psychological problems and treatments, and that's true of all the kinds of theories that people actually use. They provide conceptual tools for practice. I think that for this kind of rich, differentiated approach, that statistical hypothesis testing has limits. It also has value in some circumstances, but some of the problems are that it requires multiple observations on an isolated variable. It's not always easy to do that with cases. There's little accommodation for context, because there's a focus typically on just a few variables, just a few statements, and that may be one reason why clinicians find a lot of psychotherapy research is kind of irrelevant to their practice. It seems too narrow and focused. And fails to deal with the complexity that they face, whereas case studies offer a way to do that. So that's okay, maybe a little bit closer to the level of practice. So that's my case for case studies. That went pretty fast. I think well, I had another poll here, but I think rather than take a poll, I think I'm going to proceed, because I've got some examples of this that I think that are some case examples that might be useful. I know a few of you have heard this, because this particular module is a talk that I've given several times. So I hope, I apologize for those of you who've heard it before, but hopefully on its second time around is some savings. Okay, so this is about the assimilation model, and this is sort of a couple of examples of how cases have contributed to building the assimilation model. And so I have a slide or two of just rehearsing what the assimilation model was. It's an evolving theory. The idea is that experiences leave traces that can be reactivated and then later triggered by related meanings. That people develop communities of voices that are linked and smoothly accessible from each other and serve as resources that emerge when needed. But there are also problematic experiences or problematic voices that intrude to cause maladaptive actions or pain. And our strategy is tracking problems across sessions. And what we've observed is that in successful therapy, the problematic voices are assimilated into community through this sequence of stages that we describe using these. And the first example I want to talk about is drawn for is an example of assimilation. This was the case of Fatma, who was seen in psychoanalytic therapy by Sverre Varven. This is some years ago. And this case was important for us in elaborating the warded off stage. It was an incident that involved her traumatic memories surrounding the birth and death of a daughter while she was a political prisoner back home. She had come to Norway and was being treated in Norway. So as we understood what happened, a warded off voice was addressed, and Fatma was reliving her traumatic experience in the course of this. And there's a reference there. I can send that if you like. And so here's a thing. So this was actually quite a long segment and a very powerful one. I'm going to read it but I'm not going to pause for nearly as long as it was. So she started out saying yes. The therapist had said something about the family and he said, have you been thinking maybe about your daughter? So there was a prompt for this. The therapist had known that she had had a daughter but knew nothing more about it, just that it was a daughter who died shortly after birth while she was a political prisoner. And so she says, yes, I've been thinking, if I had my daughter, she'd have been 13 years old now, and crying, and then a 40-second pause, which is quite a long pause in therapy. The therapist said, you feel sorrow for her, and then an even longer pause, minute and a half. Maybe you saw her before you in her eyes, your daughter. She says, yeah. Did you see her, your daughter, before you? Did you think about her? So she was crying in another minute of pause. Okay, so she said, you have not told me how she was, how you remember her. Another pause. It's difficult to remember her. She just sniffs and then another long pause. It's painful to cry, yeah. Or 2-minute pause, crying. And the therapist, I don't know if you want to say something of what you think now. And she says, after a pause, it's like a film which goes on, something she says. I've thought about it. After another minute, the therapist says, and when it starts, it's okay to just take your time and cry. And she cries and laughs at the same time. And the therapist laughs with her. Says, yes, you have many feelings now inside yourself. And she said, yes. So this was a powerful session, and more was done with it later. But I think what this showed us was an elaboration of unprocessed, warded off. Whoops, what happened here? Oh, there it is. No, I don't know what happened. Warded off feelings that analogous in a way to flashbacks. So this was when we did this work in the late 90s. It was new to us, and we had a concept of warded off, but had actually not seen what it looks like, and this was in a case that we'd studied, but and it showed up here as a film-like memory. That is, it was essentially unprocessed. It was like she was, as we understood it, she was, and not just from this excerpt, but from other things. It was she was re-experiencing it, and it was this that made us. It sort of connected to the notions of sort of flashbacks and other kinds of reliving experiences that seem characteristic of this warded off stage. This is it's something that's not contradictory to the theory that the very earliest stages are warded off and avoided because of the powerful emotions, but it elaborated and told us something we didn't know about that. For the next example, I want to talk about a transition between stages 3 and 4 in the assimilation scale. This is the problem statement stage to understanding. So this is a stage, as I said before, a kind of rewarding stage of working towards insight Meredith Brenniger and some others of us did some work on this and distinguished 4 sub-stages between these 2 stages. So this is an example of a sort of an elaboration between a problem statement, which is a clear statement of the problem, through a sort of rapid crossfire stage where the 2 voices, after having been differentiated, sort of alternately take the floor and contradict each other, and then at the next stage of entitlement, the sort of the problematic voice asserts itself, followed by a stage of more. So that the voices first begin by yelling at each other, and then gradually, over the course of this development, come to join forces and try to reach a mutual understanding. Come to an understanding would be a way of saying it, and that's another way of talking about insight. This is the same thing. So this is, I thought I'd give an example just of the rapid crossfire stage, which is 3.2, an early stage there, which is where opposing voices kind of fight for the floor. And so in this case, there was a care for me voice, a voice that was an unhappy, self-focused, demanding, problematic voice, and a caretaker, sort of the usual self. This was Margaret as she normally was in life. Sort of taking care of everybody else, taking responsibility. This was a treatment for depression, and this kind of configuration of voices is not unusual among people who come for treatment for depression, in our experience. So this is Margaret, so let's see. So just for orientation, the caretaker voice is in bold, and the care for me voice is in italics here. So this is the caretaker voice. When you've been from my generation, you know you've always got your husband's supper. It's very difficult to change and to say, like, get your own, you know. But I know he doesn't expect it, because he said, if I come home late, that's my problem. And if you're in the middle of something, and then there's a kind of switch for a long time. She interrupts herself, because for a long time, if I was in the middle of something, I did resent it. I felt, well, I had my dinner. He's the one who ruined the routine, not me. Why should I stop what I'm doing? the therapist said, right. But I still, she says, switching again, but I still felt I should do it because this is my generation, you know, and but I resented doing it. So I'm kind of resolving that as I go along. So you can see that actually she interrupts herself. The care for me voice actually breaks in and interrupts here and says something that has quite a different message. Okay, so just a comment. So this is very quick because we're running out of time. Each case reveals something different, like parts of an elephant. By abduction, the model can incorporate distinctive features, the film-like memories, the step-by-step transition between stages. Now, those are we didn't expect those things when we started the case. These were sort of what the focus, in a way, of the case study ended up being decided opportunistically. This is what we learned when we paid close attention to what was going on in the case. But I think that, and in both cases, the observations were consistent with the model. It wasn't so much that they contradicted, although they might have contradicted it in some ways. But they strengthened it because, and the addition ends up strengthening the model because it allows, by expanding the model with these understandings, the model is encompassing more observations. And the expanded account was constrained by the previous observations. We couldn't make up something completely new. And the final point is that sort of from a researcher's point of view, in order for the new observations to permeate the model, that is, in order to actually do these things, to add these things to the model, we had to be fairly confident that we knew what the model was and to feel that we had the power to change it. So, I mean, this is an important feature that in doing this kind of research, you have to be not too deferent to people. If you want to do research on the assimilation model, you have to not defer to me. You have to learn the model well enough so that you can take charge of some of it at least yourself. Questions? See if we've got time for another poll or just questions.
I don't have any questions right now, but I think we're almost out of time. So I would suggest that we wait a little bit if people have final questions for you, and then after that we can wrap it up.
Okay.
Yes, I have a question from Carla Cunha. Carla, you can speak.
Okay.
My question is regarding, because I've tried to do several case studies to try to enrich theory, and my question is how to pragmatically write the papers in order that we somehow I feel a lot of difficulties when I try to write the papers, because I have to write them as if I don't know something that I already know, or I have this, or should I state what I already know in the introduction section and then demonstrate in the empirical section with the observations of the case study? Could you talk a little bit about this writing process, because it's one of the things that I struggle most. Thank you.
Bill, are you still there? Because I can't hear you anymore.
Oh, didn't you hear my question?
I think he lost his connection or something, because I can't hear him anymore. Let me see if he's still there.
Oh, okay.
He should still be there, but maybe he has some trouble with his connection. Bill, are you still there?
Kim, it looks like he's offline.
Oh, okay. So we'll just have to wait a little bit, and hopefully he'll be able to get back into the webinar. Well, this is the disadvantage of being in timeshare at the sea. If there's a breeze, then suddenly you're out of connection, perhaps. So just so that we won't be as jealous anymore of his little house by the sea.
Well, actually, Kim, maybe we should kind of wrap this webinar today, because I don't know when and if Bill's going to come back online. Can you hear me, Kim?
I can hear you, yes. It's a bit faint, but I can hear you. I agree. I'm sorry, people, for this abrupt ending. Well, as Bill said, you can actually email him with questions, and we're not sure if he's still going to be able to come online. So how about I stay online for just another while, just in case he comes back, and other people may or may not do the same, and you guys, and then we just formally end the webinar. How about that?
That sounds good. Kim, that's very kind of you, just to kind of wait to see if Bill's going to come back. But perhaps in the meantime, well, Bill is back, right?
He's back,
Bill?
but I think he can't really talk right now. He just typed something to me or to us. Bill, we've lost sound.
Assuming that Bill lost his voice.
Here, suddenly I hear somebody again.
Why don't we?
Yes, Louis, he's back.
Thank him.
Yeah, I'm back. Well, what happened?
Presentation. I think it shows.
Hello?
I can hear you, Bill. I think other people can hear you too.
Oh, okay.
Louis
went away.
That we
yeah, I think so.
In terms of
he
reading,
wanted to.
it does show in terms of the ability of covering both breadth and depth. So thank you very much, Bill, for having offered so much knowledge. Thanks everybody who participated in this and in the previous webinar. I want again to thank Kim, Sam, and Sven for all of their work. There's going to be additional webinar. In fact, we know that the next one will be with Les Greenberg. But for me, it's going to be the last time as a moderator, at least for a while. So I want to thank everybody again, Sven, Sam, and Kim in particular. This is very, very interesting, and thanks to them, I think we're going to actually create a great tradition for this.
Okay, thank you,
Louis, for getting this started, and thank you, Kim. Yeah.
So my suggestion would be, if you have time, Bill, to allow people to ask a couple more questions, because there's still some hands that are raised. And so I'm going to stay in here, and everybody who wants to leave who can leave, but then we can still do the questions and answers. So Carla, your microphone is still open. You can you rephrase your question, perhaps?
Okay, thank you. I was saying that one of the things that I struggle most when I try to write papers that focus on intensive case study research is how to structure the paper so that somehow the introduction appeals to what the empirical part is going to demonstrate or emphasize, but somehow it's difficult to write, to structure the paper, not knowing or revealing what the observations show. So could you talk a little bit about structuring the paper when you're trying to publish in intensive case studies? Thank you.
Sure. I think I was answering, and I was someplace in that when I got cut off, and I'm not sure exactly where I was in it. I agree, it's a big problem, and reviewers not used to theory building case studies are likely to have problems with it. I don't have a complete answer to that by any means. I thought I would just sort of put out one idea about structure, which is is basically to put the new theoretical ideas in an opening section of the results section, a sort of an opening heading, so that I think that there's a temptation, and in fact quite a good reason. There would be a good reason for putting the new ideas in the introduction, so that and then the empirical observations. That is, so that the introduction actually gives the best theoretical possible understanding of what your observations are going to deal with. Reviewers tend to be upset about putting new things like that in the introduction, but if instead they're moved to the top of the results, so that in a way it's a kind of a continuation of the introduction, put at the top of the results and labeled as new ideas that have emerged from the study, then the subsequent case observations, which are in the way the sort of the body, the empirical presentation of the paper, which might be dialogue or something like that, they instantiate the theoretical ideas that you have indeed presented by them. So it's a thought. I've tried it. I think that we're still working on it. You may have, if you've been working at it, you may have other kinds of solutions. That's a thought anyway.
Thank you.
Bill, I think,
Yeah.
Can you hear? Yeah, you can hear me? Okay. I don't have any
Yeah, I'm fine.
questions right now for the interesting presentation. So we are getting actually quite a bit of comments on that. Oh, we have a question. I'm sorry. Ignacio, you can, your microphone is open right now.
Okay.
Okay. Hi again, Bill. I wanted to ask you, I don't know if there's time for this question, but I'll take my chances. If you don't have time, it's all right. But I wonder,
Okay.
how do you differentiate your method, in the case study method, with the CQR or with the grounded theory in terms of generating theory?
I'm not sure that what I've got is a method in the same sense that those are. It's not so much a set of procedures, although we do follow procedures. I'm getting feedback. Maybe there's two things that might be worth saying. One is in relation to grounded theory. I think it's very much like grounded theory, except that instead of trying to start with a blank slate, instead of trying to pretend that there's no theory to start with, that you start by gaining as much familiarity as you can with the theory, and actually it would be, I think it's most effective actually if you work with an existing theory. I mean, if I were starting over again, I'm not sure I would start building a new assimilation model. Of course, it's not new. There's a lot of historicity in it, but so that the observations are building on the kind of rich theoretical base that something like client-centered theory or psychoanalytic theory or cognitive behavioral theory, that is to do research. Otherwise, very much like, otherwise in some ways like grounded theory. In relation to CQR, I'm not sure exactly. I mean, I think Clara has adjusted this from time to time, and I'm not sure this is a fair critique. But one of the features of that is looking for common features across respondents, that It's about looking for what things are common and which ones are rare, and sort of in categories of how often particular kinds of observations are made. And I think in contrast with, this is an idea from George Rosenwald, that that social phenomena are multifaceted and have distinctive uses, and there's a lot of value to be gained in trying to understand the distinctive features. That is, to build a theoretical structure that can encompass phenomena that occur only in one or a few cases, and often and recognizing that often the most interesting, most distinctive, and most theoretically informative things may occur quite rarely in extreme cases or something like that, but actually those are theoretically important. So that's a kind of difference in strategy, at least. Does that help?
Okay, that's right. Yes, thank you very much.
Okay. Any more questions? Gone again.
Hi, Bill. This is Sam. I think we're probably done.
Yeah. Hi, Sam.
We're getting lots of thank you messages in the question box, and
okay, it's a little disconnected there at the end.
I think we're sort of down to 14 attendees, so we should probably call it, given that it's 2:35.
Okay. Okay.
Goodbye, Bill.
Good. Okay. Well, thanks to everybody. Thanks to you and Louis and Kim and the whole thing. It was fun.
Thank you very much, Bill. We really appreciate it, and we'll be in touch after.
Okay, great. Bye.